Alright guys, we're gonna be reacting to Group B when rallying go too fast. I'm very like I've never seen rallying. I know it's like off-road racing. I know when I was like 7 or 8, I got my PS2 and I had rally Colin McRae rally game. I really liked it. But the only thing you do, right? I think it's just race, and I think there's different groups. So there's group A, group B, which I don't know what's the difference. So, anyways, that's let's go.
The Audi Quattro, Lancia 037, and the Peugeot 205
These look sick though.
T16.
I love these cars from like I guess they're from 90s or 80s.
Some of the most
I love
iconic
this kind of
names
style of
in
cars.
rallying. Cars that push the
I mean,
limits
look,
of
that
what
looks
was possible
sick.
in a way that we haven't seen since. It was called
The
Group
Audi's
B and is
amazing.
still held as the golden era of rallying.
Okay.
Group B was a class where manufacturers were allowed to go all out with almost unlimited power, crazy aerodynamics, and new exotic materials. It brought about new technologies like
Jesus.
four-wheel drive, semi-automatic gearboxes, and clever turbocharging systems. However, it was only for the bravest of drivers. The hugely powerful cars needed a lot of manhandling to thread them through the tight, twisty stages, away from huge drops and dodging a sea of
Because
spectators.
rally is like
But how did
really
this come
like
about, and what
the tracks are insane, right? At one movement to the wrong side and you're out. And there's not that much safety in those cars, right?
can
I
we
don't
learn
think
from
so.
the crazy cars that
Maybe
won
the cage?
in the Group B era? Rallying went
And the thing is,
wild in
people stand so close. How are you putting your life on the edge like that? I am not standing here if I'm
the
watching
crazy
it.
cars that won
No.
in the Group B era. Rallying
I
went
don't trust the
wild in
drivers.
80s. The FIA wanted to attract more manufacturers and so
that's
created
sick.
a class that would give the designers pretty much
Like
free
an
rein.
old, like Italian
no power
village.
limits, no regulations on boost, and whatever exotic materials you liked. Rally
Damn.
cars over the years have been largely based on road cars, with rules tightening and loosening on how close the relationship has to be between
Okay.
the stock car and the ones that actually race the stage.
So they're just putting random, like, well, not random, but like insane enhancements, right? Like a turbo, like whatever,
For
right?
example, in the Group A class, the manufacturers have to produce 5,000 road-going versions of the car before it is allowed to compete. In
Okay.
Group B, to lower the costs and interest of manufacturers, they ruled that only 200 cars needed to be produced. Group B also allowed
you actually
almost
drive those on the
endless
street?
modifications to be made, meaning the rally cars were nothing like the road cars at all.
Okay.
This approach really worked, attracting many manufacturers to Group B, names like Lancia.
So I'm guessing the way he explained it, Group A, you can go get these cars to drive on the road, but Group B you can't, right?
Porsche, Peugeot, Audi, Toyota, Ford, as well as so
Unless I
many
misunderstood.
more. Lancia took the Drivers' Championship in the first year of Group B,
Dude.
with the 037.
The guy
It
can't
was
even
the
see the
last rear-wheel
road.
drive car to win in the WRC. It was incredibly light, using fiberglass and Kevlar for the body, and was powered by a mid-mounted 250 horsepower engine. It
Damn.
has much larger
See what I'm talking about, dude?
wings than many
Insane
cars
people.
of the time, with a huge rear spoiler to stabilize the car at high speeds.
That looks sick.
It was supercharged to avoid turbo lag, and it was incredibly quick on the tarmac stages. However,
Okay.
it wasn't quite as quick on loose surfaces.
So what's the difference between turbo? I know I'm asking a lot of questions and I'm pausing all the time. I'm sorry. What's the difference between turbo and supercharging?
So in stepped
I don't
Audi
know what
with the Quattro,
difference.
one of the most innovative rally cars of all time, a true game changer. It had an inline 5 engine with a very clever turbocharging system that produced over
Dang.
450 brake horsepower. It had a small valve that kept the turbo spooled even when off throttle, meaning there was very little turbo lag, making the car quick out of the tight turns.
Nice.
The Audi also had a very aggressive aero kit with a huge spoiler at the front of the
Yeah,
car
I don't think that's
and
allowed
an
on the
even
street.
bigger wing on the back. This was one of the first sophisticated uses of aerodynamics in rallying. Drivers said it made the car extremely stable at high speed. The insane power was put through a clever semi-automatic gearbox and drove all 4 wheels. It was the first car to use a 4-wheel drive system effectively. Before
That's the
this,
Lancia,
many
right?
manufacturers stuck to rear-wheel drive as they thought the additional weight would outweigh any time gains from the extra traction. And yes, the Audi was very heavy, and the 4-wheel drive system meant the weight was
Was it the
higher up
Audi?
than you would like in a rally car normally. But despite the compromised dynamics, it worked. The Audi had more power than the rest of the field, but could also use it more effectively, deploying more power even on surfaces like gravel, dirt and ice. Audi won its first race with the car and didn't really...
I think it's really exciting because you go through different terrains, right? You can literally go from a gravel road onto like a tarmac, then from the tarmac go into like a mud area, right? Foresty.
They shaved seconds, if not minutes, off stage times. The Audi four-wheel drive system really changed the game in rallying.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
But the Audi dominance didn't last long. Peugeot came out with a car that would expose the weaknesses of the Quattro. They used a similar four-wheel drive system, but packaged it very differently.
I know. Peugeot, growing up, never struck me as like a race car, you know? They're like your French car that breaks all the time.
It was that they really nailed the car's dynamics. They built the car to look like the road-going 205, a small hatchback. It had a very short wheelbase, which generally makes cars more nimble at low speeds, with the trade-off of less stability at high speeds. However, rally stages are often so tight and twisty that this strategy paid off for Peugeot. They also did everything they could to keep the weight central. They fitted a 1.8 litre engine in the middle of the car, although it didn't have the clever anti-lag system that the Audi did. So the drivers used an old trick to keep the turbo spooled up. They left foot braked for the corners while staying on the throttle. This kept the turbo spooled up and gave them immediate power on the exit. But what was really unusual... That is so interesting.
I never heard of that. So instead of changing the gear, they just... Wow, okay.
The 205 was the orientation they mounted the engine in. Normally, race cars have longitudinal mounted engines with the crank parallel with the direction of the car. However, Peugeot fitted it in a transverse orientation, and instead of mounting the gearbox below the engine like in the Audi, Peugeot mounted it to the side. This meant that the majority of the weight in the car was between the two axles and could be mounted lower, making the car much more nimble and responsive in the corners.
The lower it is, right?
Low centre of gravity means the car doesn't roll too much, and if it's in the centre of the chassis, the car is easier to rotate in the corners. The 205's weight distribution wasn't 50-50 though, it placed around 60% of the weight on the rear wheels. In simple terms, rearward weight distribution promotes oversteer and frontward weight distribution creates more understeer. This rearward bias meant the car was easier to turn in and control through the turns. You can really see this if you watch the Audi through the corners. The Audi was very front heavy and produced a lot of understeer. The drivers are trying to neutralize this with the throttle, but they have to correct the car several times through the corner.
This video is so insightful, man.
Understeers, then oversteers, then understeers again through a turn. The drivers really have to wrestle it through the corner. The Quattro was by no means an easy car to drive. Now look at the Peugeot. There is one smooth input on the steering and the car looks much more balanced and easy to drive. There is no wonder it was quicker. It's incredible to watch as these drivers control the car when at crazy speeds on tight and twisty rally stages. Also not forgetting they are threading the car through a sea of spectators on the
That's
stage.
what I'm talking about,
But why are the fans allowed to be so close to the car?
That's what I'm saying.
The stages are public roads, meaning anyone could go and spectate. However, it meant that many got extremely close to the cars. Back then, people did get hit, but it was...
I know, I heard like stories that people that go to these, they would take out their hand, right, put it out, and they would miss their, like, they would chop off their fingers. I'll be stuck in the car.
Considered to be part of the challenge for the drivers. They often kept it pinned and had to hope that the fans would get out the way in time. This guy even had to jump over a passing car. Many manufacturers understood that Peugeot's was the way to go,
their fault.
all producing smaller, short wheelbase cars with all the weight in the middle. MG created the Metro with a distinctive boxy shape and a huge front wing, and the Renault 5 took a similar approach too. However, it was Lancia that did it the best. They finally scrapped rear-wheel drive after being uncompetitive all year, so they created the Lancia Delta S4, a short wheelbase four-wheel drive monster. Firstly, they developed an engine with a genius twin charging system. They fitted a supercharger to avoid the lag of a turbo, a bit like the Lancia
insanely smart engineers, man.
However, this created less power at high revs. As a supercharger is directly driven by the engine, it can provide boost at low revs, but saps more and more power as the revs climb. So what Lancia did was fit an additional turbocharger that would provide boost at high revs. So low-end boost was provided by the supercharger before cutting out and letting the turbo take over at higher revs. This meant the Delta S4 was amazingly powerful and had the grip to put it down onto the stage.
Does it go faster than a Civic though?
Many wins before eventually bringing the Group B era to a close. This era of rallying was amazing to watch. Incredibly fast cars and amazing drivers all pushing to the limits of what's possible. There were different winners every year and cars that looked remarkably different with incredible engineering. However, you can't ignore the fact that it was extremely dangerous. The cars were too powerful, difficult to drive, and not enough emphasis was put on the safety of drivers and spectators. The biggest issue was the minimum weight rule.
People in the 70s and 80s crazy,
890 kilograms. So to be competitive, manufacturers would do anything they could to get this limit down. This created a breed of cars that were very fragile and not up to the job of protecting drivers in a crash. Many of the drivers explained that if this weight limit was higher, more strengthening could have been added to better protect the drivers.
Stop driving!
Several huge crashes happened. In Portugal, Santos crested a rise in his Ford RS200. He lost control and went off the course, horrifically injuring 31 spectators and killing 3. All the teams immediately pulled out of the rally and it left Group B hanging on by a thread. A few months later, the final blow came. Lancia's Henri Toivonen was the championship favourite when he lost control late in a fast turn. He was winning by a huge margin when he and his co-driver Sergio Cresto came flying off the road, heading down a steep hill. The impact ruptured the fuel tank, spilling fuel over the red-hot turbocharger, sending the...
With that amount of protection, there's no way they're making out of there. Like, they have the cage, but... the cars were so light, it's nothing.
Car up in flames. After the incident, it was barely recognizable as a car and both Henry and Sergio were killed in the crash.
Yeah.
This led to many manufacturers pulling out and the FIA ended the Group B class the following year. You should watch this video where I explain what it takes to mod.
That was such a good video. That was actually a really good video. Before this, I knew like just minimum about rallying and this was very insightful. Thank you for watching this video, and also thank you very much to all of my supporters over at Patreon. If you'd like to see these videos earlier, head on to Patreon, and if you want to see more videos, click the videos here for more videos from me.